there's space on this base to expand.
From tech upgrades to a hiring boost, expansion with no end in sight is the goal at Robins Air Force Base.
That is our main job, is to provide combat-ready forces so that the combatant commands can fly, fight, and win.
Leaders at the base say it takes a team of thousands to make a real impact in central Georgia and beyond.
To be able to do something so important for our nation and to do it with such great people who are really like-minded about serving our nation, that's been easily the best part.
Tonight, we're going behind the lines at Robins Air Force Base to look toward the future.
There's no end to what we can do for
Behind the Lines, Flying into the Future starts now. Good evening, I'm Caitlin Heck. Thank you for joining us for Flying into the Future, our up-close, exclusive look at the work being done here at Robins Air Force Base. We're showing you the changes on the horizon and the impact those could have on the entire Central Georgia region. The nearly 23,000 men and women who work here all belong to different units that together make up Team Robins. Tonight, you'll hear from commanders from some of those major units: the 78th Air Base Wing, Warner Robins Air Logistics Complex, Air Force Reserve Command, JSTARS, and the 21st Century Partnership, an organization dedicated to keeping Robins flying high. Robins is one of 3 major depots in the entire Air Force. The others are Hill Air Force Base in Utah and Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma. Depots are responsible for the repair and maintenance of aircraft and all major weapon systems used by our nation's warfighters. Leading that work here at Robins is Commander of the Air Logistics Complex, General John Kubinick.
It's been a pretty monumental 3 years, and if you look at some of the changes that have happened and some of the new workload, I would argue it's probably the biggest new workload we've had in the last 2 decades here at Robins.
Talk about some of these new programs you have.
I think most excited about Global Hawk. If you think about it, it's the only depot in the Department of Defense that can fly an unmanned aircraft in and do depot level work on it. But when you think about the Global Hawk and what it does, the smoother the wings and the better flight dynamics that aircraft has, the quicker it can get on station and the longer it can loiter on station. That's what the Global Hawk's all about as a intel platform. And so the work we're doing is not just cosmetic here. It's really about operational efficiency and effectiveness. And we look to do some modification work on the Global Hawk next. And then whatever the long-term sustainment depot strategy for the Global Hawk is, we'll be doing that in the following years as well.
Now, another program, you guys are bringing all the C-130s here as well.
That's right. We started our Navy work last year. So we have our first Navy aircraft that's in our functional test area right now. So it's flying right now, and as soon as it checks out, we'll send that back to the fleet. And we're excited about that work. We have the next one here already, and it's already in work. Let me talk about capacity just for a little bit, because it ties into all of these new workloads. And I mentioned earlier, Caitlin, that there's so much work to be done out there. There's really, quite frankly, more work out there than we can even do that our Air Force has for us. And as I'm looking into the future and the work that we are being asked to do, I have to have every square inch of hangar space available for us to put aircraft in. And that's why being able to move those commodity items out of aircraft hangars and into the old Boeing facility is important for us, because that allows me to do more aircraft work. I'm also reconfiguring our factory. We've spent over $25 million over the last 2 years to change our footprint around to optimize our space. For instance, there's some space that I could only do fighter aircraft F-15s in. Well, I need to do F-15s in that space, and I need to free up other space that I could do C-130s in for the C-130 work. So we're almost there by FY20. We will have that project done. We will still be in a position where there will be work out there that we could do that we won't have space for. You could say it's a good problem to have. It's a problem, and we need to address it. And I'm working on a couple different ways that we can do that, how we do that, but there's a lot of work to be had out there. And I keep telling people in Washington and other places that we have the workforce here. The workforce is here. If we have some more facilities, we could do some more work. And that's something that I'll be working on over my last year here in command.
Is that kind of the big barrier, is just facilities and capacity?
It will be soon. It's not there today because we still have to, I have to make sure that my house is in order before I can tell anybody that I need more space. By 20, my house will be in order. I will have optimized every square inch of hangar space I have here on the base. And then the point will be, if we want to do more work, I need some more hangars. And that's what we'll be working with our congressional delegation, with the Air Force leadership, and with this community on how we get that.
Okay, so with all this new work and all the work that still needs to be done, how are you all able to keep up with all that work with the current workforce and the current facilities that you have?
So I'm encouraged about FY20 and as we move into 20, because we will have the workforce on board. There'll still be a bit of a training burden, but we will have the work for the first time since I've been here. We will have the workforce that we are authorized to have for the work that we have. Now we've got to get them trained, and we've got to make sure we continue to hire for attrition, and it's something that we haven't done a great job of in the past. So I charged my team just the other day that now that we're almost done with 1212, what is our battle rhythm for hiring for the next year? And it needs to be a consistent battle rhythm. We need to have a consistent demand signal to our technical college, and we need to let people know in the community that we're still hiring. Just because we finished 1212 doesn't mean we're done hiring. And so you can expect to see more and more emphasis on the workatrobins.com website. That's workatrobins.com website.
You want to say it one more time?
Workatrobins.com.
So I know production rate is always a big question, and just a couple years ago, Robins was really able to cut down those production times significantly. Have you all been able to maintain that speed, or?
Yeah, I will say it's an area where we need to improve a little bit on. We have slipped a little bit on our on-time delivery rates there, and there's a lot of reasons behind that. We talked a little bit about workforce and training. We have to get our workforce trained up and have the technicians that we are authorized to do that work. We also, the airplanes are getting older and older, and we are finding some major structural issues with some of our weapon systems. And so we have to work through all that, and that's part of this business, and that's why the work we do at Robins and at Hill and at Tinker is so in demand right now, because as these weapon systems age and as we focus on the readiness of these systems, it takes more and more work to do. So we're very aware of that. We watch that every day. We're in close contact with our warfighting partners, so they understand the challenges that we're going through, and they can have a reasonable expectation of when we'll get that weapon system back to them.
During our interview, General Kubinick also talked about more new workloads and opportunities to bring in new employees. He also touched on changes still being made to maintenance processes after faulty work done here at Robins was blamed for a KC-130 crash 2 years ago. You can find the full interviews from tonight on 13WMAZ.com and find them on our 13WMAZ YouTube channel. Within the gates, Robins is really its own city. They have a chapel, a golf course, a grocery store, even their own gas station. And the mayor of the city, as he's sometimes called, is Colonel Lyle Drew, commander of the 78th Air Base Wing. He's responsible for base-wide logistics. Now, Colonel Drew has been here for 2 years, and he heads to his next assignment this month. But I got a chance to talk with him about his accomplishments and his hopes for the next commander.
But there are some particular things that I think that we've had an opportunity to do here, especially over the last 2 years, that I would say stick out in my mind. First, I would say the work that we've done to improve the civilian hiring system has been incredible. As you know, we're completing a campaign this summer of hiring 1,200 new employees over the past 12 months into the air logistics complex, and so that's been a huge accomplishment. But we could not have done that unless we had really taken a hard look at our civilian hiring process. And so we instituted these one-stop hiring events, and so that has cut our hiring down almost 92 days in the past 2 years. And then also, we could not have done it without our congressional legislative support, having the direct hire authority available to us for those positions, streamlined our ability to bring those employees into very needed positions. The second thing is relationships. Everything that I have to do in this job has to do with the relationships that you have, and not only with those that you work with on the installation, but most importantly with the relationships that you have out in the community. So I'm very proud of the relationship that we've been able to continue to build with the Board of Education in Houston County and also with Dr. Scott, as they have allowed us more opportunities to provide our military children choice when it comes to their school opportunities. And so that is huge. Anytime that you can take care of an airman and their families when it comes to their educational needs, I think that makes individuals that are coming here to Robins or any base in our United States Air Force feel better about the community they're about to become a part of. Also, as we take a look at the world that we're in today, readiness is hugely important into what we do. Last year, we deployed 1,632 airmen to multiple locations around the world. And so to do that and to have them ready, you really need to focus on that process, not just when they're getting ready to go, but throughout the entire year. So we've worked very hard.
And you touched on, too, the partnership between the base and the Board of Education, but also, you know, what is the importance of the partnership between the base and other areas of Central Georgia?
So we have a lot of collaboration and partnerships with individuals and also other business leaders within the community. And so really, it just depends on what you're working on at the time. Like I said, we've had a great partnership with Dr. Allen and Central Georgia Technical College and the Technical College System of Georgia for not only this new agreement that has been made out at the old Boeing facility, but certainly with workforce development. How do we identify the needs that we have so that the local community can respond to that based on the courses they create and how they advertise and socialize that with the members of the community.
What do you think there still is that needs to be worked on?
So I think the challenge for any commander that comes after me is, as new missions are identified to come to Robins, how do you shape that environment? How do you signal that to the community so they know how to support it? And then how do you program the infrastructure, whether renovating something that you already have or understanding what you need to build new so that you can support that? Because you always want to be the first choice for a new mission to come into an installation.
Replacing Colonel Drew will be Colonel Brian Moore. He's from one of the other Air Force depots, Tinker in Oklahoma. Now, Colonel Drew says since all the depots work very closely with each other, he is confident that Colonel Moore will be able to keep Robins flying in the right direction. There are about 75,000 Air Force reservists stationed all around the world, all under the direction of leaders here at Air Force Reserve Command Headquarters. Deputy Commander Major General Kenneth Lewis just started his retirement, but before his last day, he gave us a glimpse of what reserve forces are doing right now all around the world.
We have taskings just like regular Air Force, where we are called up and our units are ready. They deploy and they go over and perform their missions, whether that's air refueling missions, fighter missions, those kind of things. They do that side of the house. We also, on the training side of the house, we integrate with them in a pretty unique way, in that if you were to ask anybody about the reserve what their greatest attribute is, it's experience. We're a little older, we've been around a little while, so we have people that have been working on not just airplanes, but probably that airplane for 15, 20 years. So we integrate with the active duty. They'll send mechanics in. We have the older folks that are able to do some instruction, some teaching, and mentoring. We do the same thing with our aircrew force, and with just about everything from our firefighters to our civil engineers to our personnelists. We're that way in just about every aspect of what we do.
And pilots as well.
Most definitely pilots. On the Combat Air Forces side, we call it the CAF. We are horribly short on pilots. Well, we're horribly short on pilots worldwide, but the Air Force is definitely short, and our fighter forces are in a critical way. What we have been able to provide are jets with experienced pilots to do the training and maintenance, so that we can get these regular Air Force numbers up. And we get them up much quicker than what they can on the regular Air Force side.
But I mean, it's not like the reserves are just kind of the backup to the active duty. I mean, they are together. That's
right. We're full up partners. We're in every mission they are. We do things with the regular Air Force and without the regular Air Force, depending on what the mission set is, where we're deployed, how many folks have to deploy. We're all over the world doing that business.
And trained to the same standard.
Trained to the exact same standard. We can we use their tables, their training tables to train our folks with, and we can be out the door usually within hours, but a maximum of around 72 hours. We can be anywhere in the world.
These civilian airmen in the reserves, I mean, they're volunteers. They have other jobs and other lives.
I really admire the folks that can do this. They have to keep their civilian employer happy. They have to keep their spouse happy, and they have to keep the military supervisor happy as well. And we have a saying: as long as they're unhappy at the same rate, then we're probably doing pretty well. But you get you get some benefits with that. We get the benefit of their civilian experience, their work experience that we can utilize. And on the civilian side, they take the leadership aspects and the camaraderie aspects into their civilian jobs.
The Air Force Reserve Command is also responsible for the hurricane hunters that help the National Hurricane Center track data from the center of the storm. And still ahead on Flying into the Future. With an aging fleet of planes and need for more high-tech equipment, the future of the JSTARS units still has some question marks. Coming up, we hear from the two commanders about changes on the horizon. That's next when Flying into the Future continues. Welcome back to Flying into the Future, our up-close look at the work being done here at Robins Air Force Base. There's a saying around here that the sun never sets on the JSTARS mission. And that's true. The two units that make up JSTARS, or Joint Surveillance Target Attack Radar System, are always on the go, helping our nation's warfighters on the ground and in the sky all around the globe. But the sun will soon set on JSTARS as it's known right now. The aging fleet of E-8C planes will soon be replaced by what's being called Advanced Battle Management System, or ABMS. Commander of the 116th Air Control Wing, the National Guard unit of JSTARS, Colonel Atu Crumbly, spoke with me about what this will mean for his unit.
On the Guard side, we've remissioned 8 or 9 times, right? I mean, you can go back to the P-51 days. So every time there's a change in aircraft or mission, you kind of get this, anxiety. Oh, what's next? Or I was good at the P-51. Will I be able to work on the F-86, right? Just to use an example. The state of Georgia in particular, the 116th, has never lost a job in conversion. We expect the same with this conversion. So whether we do know that ABMS is coming here, and our CODELs are working hard to ensure that we have the same number of jobs, if not more. And I can even go into more depth for you, a little bit more depth on that. So ABMS is going to be the system of systems that will encapsulate everything that the E-8C does plus some. Now the unit may not look the same because you may not see as many planes out there, but that system will need more intel people. It will need cyber people. So what's going to happen is I take the available people that I have right now and I retrain them, and they move into these other jobs. And on top of that, with the growth of intel and cyber, I'm going to be recruiting hard, at places like Georgia Tech, Fort Valley State, Mercer, to pull people in because these jobs are going to require some kind of technical expertise. So I actually look for the jobs piece of it to grow versus decrease. It's just that the jobs will look different than what you see right now.
So being here at Robins and being so integrated in this community is really going to help you.
Oh, absolutely. We have great mission partners right now through education and with other industries. So I don't think there's a better place in the country to put ABMS. There was a quote from a 4-star general that said that Robins is basically the center of mass, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but the center of mass for C2, for command and control for the United States Air Force. So there's no better place to put it. And when you couple that with the ALC, our industry partners, and then our partners in education to include GTRI, Georgia Tech Research Institute, I think this is a very good decision that the Department of Defense made.
And for people who may not quite understand what ABMS is or is going to be, can you kind of talk a little bit about what it's supposed to look like?
So ABMS is supposed to basically be a command and control system that will help replace some of the things, or all the things that the E-8 does, plus do a little bit more. I heard one person say ABMS is supposed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time, right? So all of the command and control things that we do, even the GMTI, like with the surveillance radar that we have on the airplane, ABMS is supposed to be able to do that through many domains.
As part of the Georgia Air National Guard, the 116th is also responsible for helping during and after natural disasters like hurricanes and other emergency situations. The 461st Air Control Wing is the active duty component of JSTARS, and they work hand in hand with the 116th. Speaking of changes coming to JSTARS, Commander of the 461st, Colonel Curtis Bass, leaves for an assignment in New York this summer. But he told me he's confident the leadership change won't create any turbulence as JSTARS enters this transition period.
My current Vice Wing Commander, Colonel Ed Goebel, is going to move up into the command position, so he will bring with him 2 years of continuity and 2 years of understanding the mission already, and stay for another 2 years for a total of 4. So he's already in place. We don't have to wait for him to get here, and he will bring a huge breadth of knowledge and capability along with him.
And how important is that he's already here and kind of knows everyone here and knows the system as we're starting to get into that transition phase?
I think it's really important. It's not often that active duty vice commanders move up into the commander position, but this time he's the best man for the job, and he's in the right place at the right time as we do move into ABMS.
What are your thoughts on what that's going to look like moving forward as we start to transition?
Honestly, I think budgeting, sustainment, and how we move forward with our Air Force, it's going to depend on whether you're connected to ABMS or not. And that's going to happen right here at Middle Georgia with possibly a fusion center with operators in that fusion center on the ground, as well as flying planes or possibly remotely piloted aircraft.
And what does that say about Robins and about 461st and 116th that they're wanting to bring that here?
You know, our Air Force leaders have picked Robins Air Force Base in Middle Georgia because of not only the units that are here right now, but the possibilities, the potential for the area. There are organizations, there's buildings, there's space on this base to expand, as well as really the technical capabilities of this region to feed the fight, whether it be the technical colleges, Georgia Tech, you name it, GTRI, lots of good organizations that can help feed into that mission from a civilian side of the house.
And you did mention too, you guys have a very unique relationship between the 461st and the 116th.
Right.
And what is that like, being able to work with another unit and really feed off of each other?
I think it's great because the 116th brings years and years of expertise, and I'm not trying to say that they have a bunch of older folks, but they've been here for quite a long time, since 2002. As the active duty folks rotate out every 2 to 3 to 4 years, just depending, the Guard is here. The 116th Air Control Wing from the Georgia Air National Guard continues the mission with the expertise. So where some units might have to hold people a whole lot longer on the active duty side for expertise, we can continue to rotate out and get people different experiences around the country, around the world.
And that's probably really going to come in handy when we start to transition to ABMS too.
Yes, ma'am, and like we said before, we don't really know what it's going to look like, but that transition with the Guard bringing their expertise and the active duty providing members as well to that fight that will bring expertise from their different assignments around the world. The advanced battle management processes, the advanced battle management system, I think will be set very well.
So as you can see, change is one of the few constants here at Robins. We've talked about program changes, leadership changes, but outside of these gates, an organization providing unwavering support. The 21st Century Partnership formed in the early 90s when Robins found itself on the base realignment and closure list. But since then, President and CEO Chrissy Miner says they have worked hard to keep Robins soaring.
Our sole focus is a laser-like focus on protecting and maintaining growing Robins Air Force Base. I mean, that's really the genesis of what we do. That's why we exist as an entity. And we don't do it alone. We can't do it alone. We have so many partners that are too numerous to list, and stakeholders that all have a piece in this puzzle. And what we do is we connect and we collaborate and we help facilitate.
Now, Robins has come so far that, are we, I don't want to say BRAC proof, but, we're far from that danger list.
Even though we were generated out of a base realignment closure, it's not the real threat. The real threat is the year-to-year process that we go through to make sure that those appropriations remain here at Robins, that we continue to grow and we don't lose missions, we don't farm out work to other places, because, and I hate to use the term because it's so overused, but they call it death by 1,000 cuts. Right? You want to make sure that under the radar, you're not slowly leaking. What happens when you have a leak? And it just slowly, next thing you know, your basement is flooded because you didn't know there was just that tiny little leak. And so those are the kind of things that we take seriously. And I'll tell you, while we've been laser focused on the legislative process, we've actually dipped our toe into some new waters on the partnership front. We recently brought on Mr. Jamie Cook, who was an engineering recruiter for Robins Air Force Base, and he retired. He's working with us part-time, and the reason is this: in a good economy like this, everybody is competing for that first-class workforce, right? And so we need to have a leg up, and really we're trying to supplement the base and their efforts using the expertise that Mr. Cook has and implementing that within the community to help be a microphone and an extended voice of Robins Air Force Base of, hey, STEM engineers, STEM talent, we want you to come work at Robins Air Force Base.
And is there anything coming up this year that on the federal level that you all are concerned about or trying to find?
One thing that we're very concerned with and we want to make sure is the Budget Control Act of 2011, aka sequestration. That is still a law. And so we have to ensure that our legislators know that it is critical that they don't go back to those budget caps, which would severely hamper the readiness that has been gained over the last few years. And so that's one thing that we're very concerned with, and we want to make sure, but all of our legislators are well aware of this and working hard and championing not going backwards, but of course staying the course and going forward, making sure that our Department of Defense is amply funded and again has a budget.
All of the leaders that you heard from tonight mentioned multiple times during our interviews that the success of Robins Air Force Base relies heavily on the support from the Central Georgia community. The partnerships, STEM education programs, businesses, even just friendly neighbors make a huge difference in the lives of the men and women who work here now and in the future. Now, it would take much longer than 30 minutes to go through everything happening here at Robins Air Force Base, but you can find the full interviews from tonight on 13WMAZ.com and on our 13WMAZ YouTube channel. I'm Caitlin Heck. Thank you for joining us for Flying into the Future. 13WMAZ News at 6 is next.